Hey everyone, it's Arwen here. Before we get started, in light of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the topic and language in this episode, it might be a little bit heavy for young ones in an earshot. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Thanks.
When I approached him about the rent being behind 3 months and knowing that we could potentially get kicked out of our home, he lost it on me. So he picked me up and he threw me on the dining room table, which shattered into pieces.
Welcome to She Handled It, a podcast dedicated to sharing empowering stories of women who have faced major adversity and how they overcame it. I'm your host, Arwen Becker. I'm a wife, mom, national speaker, author, entrepreneur, and athlete. But on my journey to these triumphs, I've battled many life-altering challenges. Thankfully, I found freedom when I realized I was not alone. I invite you to join me each week as I explore the inspirational stories of determined women who overcame life's toughest moments. Ultimately, how she handled it, and so can you. So I promised all of you listeners from the beginning of this podcast that this was not going to be a superficial conversation. So I am going to break this down very quickly. If you have not met Jessica Conness or you've never seen her on social media, let me just tell you, she's absolutely stunning. This woman, the first time I saw her, I was like, oh my dear God, she has everything together. She's got a beautiful figure, beautiful face, just all seems to be working together. And the reason that she and I actually came to know one another is her husband, Grant, is in the same line of work that both Randy and I are in. He's in retirement planning. They just happen to do it down in the Florida area. And we occasionally, maybe once or twice a year, might get to travel to some of these great, beautiful destinations because we're affiliated with the same company in Kansas. And so I have to admit, she has this whole personality and this beautiful outer look that I actually found pretty intimidating. And I truthfully allowed my preconceived judgments and ideas that I had of her get in the way of me actually getting to know her. And the first number of times that we were on these trips together, I think back and I recognize that I allowed my own personal insecurities that I had about myself color my view of her and make me believe that I knew what kind of person she was just by this exterior view that I saw. Yet through some of our last few trips that we've taken together, I've gotten to know that she's actually this really vibrant personality, somebody who's very self-confident, that truthfully really doesn't care too much about what you think of her, which she said out of her own mouth. I just heard it on Instagram a couple of days ago, which of course to me is such a departure because I care too much oftentimes about what other people think of me. So I admire that in her, but yet she loves her kids, she loves her husband, and she brings this life and this laughter to everybody around her. And that is just something that I really, really love about how richly she lives her life. And it's not rich in this financial sense, and she doesn't take it too seriously. And she makes it all about family. And I'm telling you, if you have not seen her on social media, some of the videos that she posted during quarantine were so damn funny. I'm telling you, you absolutely have to watch some of them. So Jessica Conness, she was born and raised in South Florida. She now lives in East Fort Lauderdale. She's a mother of 4, Kira, Cody, Kylie, and Kinley. And she has been happily married to her husband, Grant, for over 15 years. She enjoys, of course, spending time with her family, as I said, but boating and traveling and just really living her life to the fullest. And when she's not hanging out with her kids or her family, she spends time working on her interior design business, which organically kind of fell into her lap a couple of years ago. And she is so good at it. And she's been experiencing a bunch of success in it today. And she has a very robust social media presence. And as I said, she brings humor and light to all that she does. And Jessica, I'm so excited that you joined me on this show today.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me.
Well, it's my joy. You know, I think back, I think back to the time that you and I and our husbands were in Milan. It was about a year and a half ago. And we just happened to be getting into the same cab, leaving this nightclub. And we got into this cab and you said, oh my gosh, we are absolutely going to make a stop. It was non-negotiable. You already told the cab driver where he was taking us. So we're like, what in the heck is going on? And because you had traveled and modeled throughout your teens and 20s, and I don't know, maybe even beyond that, but you had lived in Milan. So you were like, this is the picture of a lifetime. And we are absolutely going, and I'm going to get you guys a picture that you absolutely have to take. Do you remember that night?
Oh, yes, very vividly.
And you know what? It is absolutely true. That picture and that night, as you had said, would be one of the best memories captured on film of my life. And there's no question about it. But I think the part that really makes me laugh, it was this beautiful photo. So we were in front of the Duomo, right?
Yeah, the Duomo. Yep.
Duomo, the cathedral. Oh my gosh, it's so amazing. But the fact that it was 3:30 in the morning, there were almost no people out there, but the lights on the cathedral and it was just stunning. And so my husband and I are locked in an embrace and we're doing the classic cliche. My leg is lifted up, kicked out from behind me and I'm in this dress and, and you're seeing our shadows in front of this beautiful cathedral. And then my husband starts to lose his balance. And Jessica keeps snapping photos as you see him tilt back. And here I am in my heels and I'm trying to hold him up. And all of a sudden now the weight shifts back over him and the two of us end up plowing into the concrete. And the whole thing is captured in still photos. It is so hilarious. Got to be one of the best nights of my life. That was so funny. So thank you very much for doing that.
Oh, that was amazing.
Because you lived there for how long?
Well, I would go there for 3 weeks, then I would come home and then I would go back. And it just depended on what season we were in and, where else I needed to travel. But no, the summers, I would spend the whole summers there. And then it was fashion week. I would go and then times in between for just photo shoots and showroom stuff.
And how long was your modeling career? How old were you when you started?
Well, I started when I was young. So I would say like probably 6 or 7. And then it just continued from there. And then when Miami, it shifted to very Latin. And so the market wasn't there for me anymore and I had to figure it out. So then, my agent was like, well, let's try Italy. And coincidentally, I had met an Italian man that lived in Milan too. So his family was very gracious to let me stay at their home instead of the little tiny modeling apartments and stuff. And I just learned and loved Italy so much. I mean, it's magical. It's beautiful. I had some amazing memories there.
It is magical. There's no question about it. We weren't even there for that long, and I am amazed at how many wonderful memories we have. So we have this overcomer playlist that I'm continuing to build out. I think of it this way, is that in all seasons of life, there are challenges that we're going through. And sometimes, it's something where we're stepping out into something new and we just need something that pumps us up and makes us just feel awesome and feel like we can go handle whatever is going to be coming on. Or there are those times where we just need to weep and cry and we're mourning the loss of something that we expected it to be what it was and it didn't end up turning out that way or whatever it might be. But we're always in some form of overcoming some challenge in our lives. And so I have this list that has continued to grow out. So you said that you had a song for us. What song is that?
Philip Phillips, and it's Tell Me a Story.
How does that? I don't even know if I've heard that one. What's the kind of the vibe of it?
Just pretty chill, but I just love like his words in it because it says like, tell me a story long and true, beyond what we are, beyond what we do. And then it's like pieces of a puzzle and it's just I don't know, like I just love it. And, when it first came out, I would cry when I listened to it. And it's just, I don't know. I just think like he's an amazing singer. And I just love the song. You have to listen to it.
It's going on my list. I love it. I love it. So, I kind of started out with such a fun memory, but, here we are in October and being National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I know that that is something that has hit too close to home for you. So, maybe you can just start by taking us back there.
Okay. So it was like 20 years ago, and I was in this abusive relationship, which I never was in an abusive relationship before, but I was young. I had my daughter when I was 23, and we were in a relationship for 5 years. So it was really like one of my first serious relationships. So for 5 years, I'm with him, and his family his mom was just an amazing person. And I loved his sisters and his brother. And, I went through this relationship, and I thought we would go to his dad's house, and it was Christmas. And I'll never forget, there was this one time where we came home, and, we had wine, and, we were living together, and we got home, and out of nowhere, he snapped on me. And I was so scared. And then he got arrested because the neighbors had called the cops, and then his mom pleaded for me to drop the charges. So I did. And then I'm going through this awful relationship with him, because when times were good, they were good. But with domestic violence, it's a cycle. So you go through the part where they, have their way with you, and then they call it the honeymoon stage. And so then everything's like better again. But what happened was, during this time, I was changing from one pill to another, and I became pregnant with my oldest daughter, Kira. And 3 months into my pregnancy, his mom was like, you guys have to get married. And so I thought in my head that every step, I would assume that, if I was pregnant, he wasn't going to do those things to me, but that was not true. And then, I thought, okay, well, if we get married, then you're solidifying your like you're together as one. At least that's what I thought. And then that wasn't the case, because we got married and it still continued. And then our year anniversary. So I had the baby in March. Our anniversary was in September. I think it was September. And the landlord kept coming to the house and telling me that we did not pay rent. And it was like 3 months behind. And here I have this newborn baby.
Was that a surprise to you? Did you think that rent was being paid?
I mean, I thought, but I didn't know, because I was home with the baby, and, I couldn't do my modeling because he was very controlling of that. He did not want me working. Basically, he just wanted to control my every move.
So was the abuse physical and verbal? Was it a lot of yelling and that kind of stuff too?
Everything. It was like I had both. I had the verbal and the abusive. So that will break you down to nothing. Just nothing.
Happened while you were pregnant too? I mean, did it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He threw me down steps.
Oh my God.
And I had a belly and everything. Like, it was very scary. So when I approached him about the rent being behind 3 months and knowing that we could potentially get kicked out of our home, he lost it on me. So he picked me up and he threw me on the dining room table, which shattered into pieces. The baby was in the bedroom. So I grabbed the phone, I threw it on the ground, I called 911. And I ran into a room and I closed the door. And the windows were these jealousy windows, so you can't get through them. And I almost like took her rocking chair and threw it through the window just to get us out of there, because he was like banging it down. So then I took the dresser and I pushed it in front of the door. And then I heard the cops come in, and I had her in my arms and I was shaking, and I was just trying to sing to her, because he was saying the worst things ever imaginable. And, they came and they arrested him. Now, this is probably like the 5th or 6th time he had been arrested.
For this specific thing?
Oh, yeah. Just with me.
Just with you. Jeez.
Just with me. So then the next time, the next day, DCF came. So Child Services. And, they want you to relay the story and tell them everything. And, so I'm just talking with this woman in all confidence. Like I was just telling her, and she said, honey, if this happens again, we're going to take your baby. And my heart, ooh, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I changed all the locks. I quickly came up with the money. I had no help. I got a nanny. I went right back to working, and the agency knew what I'd been through. So they fronted me because they knew that I was with them for a long time, which I thought was super sweet. And they got me back on my feet, and I was so skinny. I think I was like 95 pounds wet, and I was so stressed out. And he kept like trying to break into the house and stuff. And we would try to exchange the baby, but then he would start fights with me. So I'd have to call the cops again. And then it had to be where, his parents would have to pick up the baby. And then he just kind of like, he got on a boat in Miami. He worked on boats and he just started traveling. But he was the whole guilt thing. It's, you broke up our family. You ruined our marriage. How could you do this to us? And I was like, well, you did it to yourself and you're the one that caused the problem. And I can't live knowing that my baby could possibly be taken away from me. And I don't want to be treated like this anymore. I know that my worth is more than this. So it was very hard. And every day I would have to say to myself, you can do this. I would say, I was like a crazy person. I would walk through my house and I would give myself pep talks, talking to myself, because I just felt like I was just going to shrivel up in a ball. Then I went to counseling, and now just take it back a couple steps. I think right when I got pregnant with my daughter, I went to Women in Distress. And that's a very depressing place to be, because I felt like I was too good to be there. And I hate even saying that, but what the reality was is that there was women that had children and had to move and change their names. So say they lived in Missouri and they got so beat up that they had to remove themselves from where they lived, pull their children from their school, change their name, and move into Women in Distress in Florida so that they could start their lives again.
God, to leave their entire support network, if they had one, behind and have to start over from less than zero.
Could you imagine?
No.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't belong here. He just beat me up. He kicked my ass. I'm stronger than this. I can do this. And then, because I was pregnant, so I was with him, and he didn't know that I was going to these meetings. And the lady looked at me and she said, you have to leave him. And I said, I can't. And she said, Jessica, this isn't going to get better. It's going to progressively get worse. And if you live at the end of this, it will be a miracle.
You still stayed for months after that?
So I had the baby, and then right at our year wedding anniversary is right before this all happened, when he threw me on the table, and then I was just done.
Wow.
And I think when my daughter was 2 or 3, I went to the Bahamas because he was begging me to get back with him. And I spent a weekend, and it was just horrible. And I just never looked back after that. I just never looked back. And he stopped communication with he never paid child support. My daughter doesn't have a relationship with him now.
And so the very much silver lining, I know, at the end of that for your daughter, you've got 4 kids, but with your oldest that you had with him, is it wasn't too long ago that Grant, your current husband, who you've been married to for over 15 years, adopted her, correct?
They're in the process right now.
In the process. She asked him. That was what she'd asked him, right? Yeah, I saw that video. I totally cried. It's just I was cried and I screamed. And because knowing what it's like adopting an older child, because my oldest, who's now almost 24, but adopting him at 16, and, having a kid, more of a grown adult, young adult, look at you and say, will you adopt me? And so seeing that happen between her and Grant was just so magical and such a beautiful end to such a terrible start. I have to imagine you go back because the two of you, that your former, were together for, you said 5 years. It was a span of 5 years.
Yep.
So how early on do you think you can recall in that relationship that you knew something was wrong?
6 months.
Very short period of time.
Yep.
And why do you think at that time you didn't listen to those red flags?
Because I just, like I said, I felt like every step that we took, because he would also make me believe too that he was going to change and that he loved me, when it was that honeymoon stage, and, he would do everything to make me happy. And it was just so confusing and conflicting because he was such a lover, but when he was evil, it was horrible. So he just kept dragging me back in and making me believe, and then I thought after the first time he got arrested that wow, that's huge. How could you want to go back to doing that again to me? I mean, I had these pants on that were stretchy material, and I had burns on the back of my legs because when he ripped my pants off of me, and the back of my legs had burns because of the material. That's how hard he was pulling me.
Gosh.
And my face and everything. So I just thought I don't know. He kept reeling me back in. And then I had to kick him out of the house, and his mom lived in the same apartment complex as me. So he would hide in the bushes and see me pull up. And then he would jump out of the bushes and he would be like, you have to talk to me. And I'm like, I'm not allowed to. I have a restraining order. We can't have any contact. And then he would just cry and say these things to me, and he would sucker me back in. And then it would be a whole nother cycle again.
Right. Until the blow up came again.
And I would say it was every 3 to 4 weeks that it would blow up again. So once a month I was getting abused.
When you think back on that time period, do you think that there's anything that people could have said, that anybody else could have said or done to help you in that? Or was it just something you had to move through yourself?
I think that when you're in something like that, because of how they break you down with their words and they make you feel like you're worthless, that you're almost hiding yourself from people. I pulled away from so many people because I was almost embarrassed.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely believe that. When we get to a point where we have no self-worth or very, very little self-worth, to have somebody that's so unhealthy and unhinged that can still get into that place and make you believe for a moment that this is somehow okay for me because I'm at least getting moments of having somebody tell me I'm beautiful and I'm so sorry and you're the best thing that's ever happened to me, and all the recordings that come out of the mouth of somebody who is backtracking after abusing and physically harming somebody to such an extent, and then yet to be able to use their words to come back in and believe, well, I don't really have much of anything, so I guess this is good enough. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, what I heard from what you said is the value of having a support network. Because, like you said, you kind of pulled away and withdrew because of your embarrassment and your shame and not wanting to bring people into that space. Yet that's the space people needed to come into to help get you out of it. And I think we all do that because we're afraid that we're the only one, that somebody, they can't relate, or what will they think of me, or, the fact that I would allow somebody to talk to me that way, or I must really be trash because he's told me I'm trash. So I really must be, a horrible person to be treated this way. I must somehow deserve it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's exactly what it was. And it was just, you go in a hole. It was a very lonely place to be.
There were probably people in your life that didn't really know that was going on. Were you pretty good at hiding it, or were you just detached from a lot of people in your life at that point?
I think I was detached, but I think like I would, like I would have to hide myself in a lot of clothes because of the bruises and the scrapes and all of the things. And, one time I wore a sweater and it was like 90 degrees out. And my girlfriend's like, what are you doing? And then we had a couple drinks together and I showed her and she just started crying. Like, what are you doing? But I would say that was closer to the end of me, like coming around and just like, I knew in my heart after I had the baby that that wasn't what I wanted her to grow into. So I think towards the end is when I really started to come out and start telling my girlfriends. And yeah, and his mom, like she would really leech on to me and talk to me. And, his sister knew what was going on and his other sister. So it was like really like they knew what was going on. So they were kind of the ones that I would talk to. But then at the same time, I would only give so much information.
Well, I guess if you were limiting information, I mean, did they think that you should have still been with him? I mean,
his mom was like, listen, I think you are in love with the person that he's not, and he will never be. And she's like, I love him. He's my son. But she would tell me, you can get past this and you need to move on.
So when you think back and, all those years, that 5-year journey, I mean, what would you say would be a couple things that you look back and you go, I learned that from that experience?
I think it made me more like powerful because then I like realized there was life like after this. And I think my daughter saved me, honestly. Having her, any child, it changes your life, right? But just knowing that was the example I did not want for her. I didn't want her to think that was normal. I think that it breaks you down. Then you go through counseling and then you realize that that's not healthy. And then you rebuild yourself. And then you just become like a badass bitch. And then, yeah, because like after I realized what I was worth and like I knew that I wasn't the problem, I was such a bitch. Like I literally was like, you're not worth it to me. I wouldn't date anybody. I was so cold. I wouldn't trust. Like trust was a very hard thing after that. And then I think that's when I just came into my own. Like, then I realized, like, I want to be a happy person. I want to laugh daily. I want to find humor in weird stuff, I want to, like, live life to the fullest. And I did it. And I did it on my own. I got the nanny by myself. I had her full time. She was living with me. So I had the freedom, which was very weird after too. And it was just all these things that over time, I just built myself back up. And it was the most amazing feeling ever. Like when I met my husband, which we grew up together, but when we connected, I bought a 3-bedroom house with a pool by myself. No one helped me. And when we got together and we wanted to move to California, I sold my house and I made money off of it. And I'm like, I did that by myself. No one helped me. So once you get to that level and you know your worth, everything's possible. Everything is possible. It sucked. It was the hardest thing in my life, but it was the most amazing thing. So what did I learn out about it? I learned that I can do it, and I did it, and it felt really good.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's a couple of things. One that I thought of is, you talked about when you it hit you really very much rock bottom, you said, and then became this absolute cold bitch on the other side. So because you were just like blocking people out, right? I talk a lot about this, the pendulum of life. If we stay closed off and, walled up and everything, yeah, we won't get hurt, but we also won't live this life that you're talking about, this one that's vibrant and full of joy and laughter and all of those pieces that the pendulum has to swing one way and then it goes to the other. And then going through counseling, figuring out what was acceptable and normal behavior and what was not and what was healthy. But then over time, as we realize, okay, what are healthy people and healthy relationships? And you can identify, just like you said, about 6 months in, you recognize there were things that weren't right about this relationship. But yet I have to imagine that that's very much a common part that people go through when you've gone through such abuse, is kind of walling up for a while and then learning how to open up in a healthy way and be able to be exposed to people who will care for you in that space appropriately. And that's certainly what you've found now.
100%. But do you know what I do remember is there was this one counselor that I went to. She was absolutely adorable. I had to drive 45 minutes to get to her, but she was married, and she looked at me and she said, in your next relationship, I want you to find a man that will let you dance on top of a table and look at you and laugh at you and help you down when you're done. And that stuck to me. Those were the most powerful, innocent, easy words to say to somebody that pushed me to help me find that sweet soul that would let me do that. And, like you see Grant, like he's so like easy and mellow and like.
And I've seen him absolutely do that for you. I have seen you dance on a table and I have seen him gracefully help you down.
Yeah. I challenged him. I still do.
Who knew that she was going to paint exactly that perfect picture? Well, obviously she knew who you were. I mean, that's one of the things that I've so admired about you. That's why I love being around you, because you are such a person who is just, to me, what I see is somebody who is free to be who you are, and you don't apologize for it. And it might not be for everybody, and you're okay with that. And that's the beauty of it, is we're not supposed to be like each other. It's drawing people towards you that challenge your way of thinking, that challenge your way of doing things, that bring you to a place of letting go. And, that's what you do for me. Is when I see you live your life, I'm reminded I don't have to have it all packaged up. I don't have to have it all put together. I don't have to have it, as much as your package looks absolutely freaking awesome. Let me tell you, your life and the way you bring it, but you don't apologize for it. And I think that is just such the beauty of who you are as an individual and what you provide to women around you. And you're going to draw in those women who need it. And I love that about you. And I just am so glad that you are who you are and that you bring that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you for those sweet words, because that means a lot to me.
Thank you. Well, you're welcome. So rapid fire, quick last 3 questions. Best piece of financial wisdom that you've been given?
Best financial advice. I think it's just enjoying life with what you have, not living above your means, and being as conservative as you can with some things.
Would you say, to expand on that, you can look back at times in your life where you didn't have the means, of course, that you have now, and recognize you still lived it up?
Yes. But, when the recession hit for Grant and I, if, you want to tap on that one, we had 3 babies in diapers and $500 in our bank account. So that was a very scary time. But thankfully, we made it through and we did it with grace. And we ate a lot of pizzas, but still had fun.
Yep. I believe it. I absolutely believe it. So what's a book that you would recommend and why?
This is so sad. I don't read books.
Okay. So do you listen to podcasts or do you listen to anything specific?
I don't. And I literally, when I read, it's like Instagram or anything that has to do with home decor. I'm just really focused on that. And I just love anything. So for me, it's more like resourcing and looking at pictures and reading interior designers' ideas. But for me to pick up a book and read, because I always feel and especially now because the kids being home, like when I was pregnant and stuff, I read about the pregnancies, and then, you read about the babies and stuff like that. And then you're just a whirlwind of running around all the time. So I wish I had more time to sit down and read a book, but I feel like with the kids being home from school, and then, there's quick questions, and then I have to run downstairs and help whoever. So I don't know. I want to read your book.
Hey, there you go. It's in the mail.
There it is.
And then what would you say is a favorite quote?
Without change, there is no growth.
Without change, there is no growth. Absolutely. Totally agree with that. So how can our listeners get a hold of you? What are some of the good ways to be able to connect with Jessica Conness?
I think the best way is Instagram, and it's Jess, Jess, Conness, Conness.
The blog that you have, is the blog most specifically on Instagram?
Yeah, you can link to it on there, but honestly, I have not had enough time to continue to write on there. And I think that people have enjoyed me more doing the stories on Instagram and, doing it that way. So it's easier for me with the timing of everything.
Totally.
And it's just fun. Like, I love when people ask me questions and stuff, and it makes me laugh, and it's easy and fun and light.
Yes, it is. I love your stuff. Honestly, I was just looking through it again yesterday, and I found myself multiple times laughing out loud at the picture of you in the pillow dress with the pillow crown, and and some of those postings that you had of like the Groundhog's Day repeat of early COVID and what that looked like every morning. It's so funny. And I'm telling you, any of you out there, go onto her Instagram, follow her. You are going to find yourself at multiple moments where you need something a little bit lighter than certainly the life that we're in right now. But Jessica, that's what you do. You provide the light that you have. It's your God-given light, and you have embraced it. And certainly after coming out of such deep, dark struggle, to recognize how dark it can be, and then really understanding how beautiful your light is, and then not apologize for standing brilliantly in it and sharing that. And so I just thank you so much for your honesty, for your truth, and just for being a light in my world.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for spending time with me on the She Handled It podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe so future interviews are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to the show notes, including links to all the resources mentioned, visit lifewitharwin.com/podcast. Thanks again for joining me. Now charge forth, because if she handled it, so can you.